Last speaker, or actually our last writer who I spoke about, by the way, was Niccolo Machiavelli. Died in 1527. 20 years later, another writer was born, this one in Spain. Son of a surgeon. Doesn't sound big. Surgeon, wow. Today's world, son of a surgeon means something. Back then, you were lower on the food chain than intestinal protozoa. A surgeon was nothing in the 16th century. So, our next hero grew up with nothing. However, when he was in his early 20s, he decided, I'm going to make my mark in this world. I will join the military in Italy. And he did. He was part of the Battle of Lepanto. For those who don't know what that battle was, one of the most significant battles between the Christians and the Ottomans that changed the face of the earth. Not only was he part of the battle, he was a hero. A hero. Too sick to fight. They sent him to bed. He got out of the sick bed, went to the top of the boat, and led the charges. 2 bullet wounds in his chest. His left hand shattered during the battle, but he survived and he was a hero. And all of Spain knew about it. Quickly. This was a man who suddenly rose from nothing to here overnight, and he was just 24 years of age. And then Fortuna paid a visit. Somehow, this hero was dishonorably discharged from the military. Dishonorably discharged. On his way back to Spain with his brother Rodrigo, he was abducted by pirates. Sent to slavery in Algiers for 5 years. Why? They found a letter of commendation in his pocket, proclaiming him a hero. And his slave drivers figured he's worth a lot of money. And they asked for a ton in ransom. It took the Trinitarians 5 years to raise that much money to ransom him out. But they did. 5 years under slavery, however, that'll change anyone. And boy, there's changed our hero in this case. Gets back to Spain. He's disabled, no use of his left hand. Dishonorably discharged, enslaved, and they discover, although this has never been fully proven, he descended from Jews. This is the middle of the Inquisition in Spain. What else could he have going against him? What else could there be? Well, he couldn't find work, and he searched, and he searched, and he searched, and finally, he found a job. The most thankless job humanly imaginable. He became a grain collector. Grain collector. For the Royal Navy. He had to visit successful farmers and say, please give us grain. Foreign Navy members, and they said, as you used to say in the Bronx, nobody wanted to give him much grain. He did get some, and when he did his books, you know what they discovered? His books were off. Did he steal some? I don't know. But he was fired from the only job he could get. But then they found another employment for him, another piece of employment. A tax collector. Isn't that a fun job? He went out there to collect taxes from the wealthy. And you know what they told him? He managed to collect some. Yeah, he collected some. And then when they looked at the books, they didn't match. The books didn't match. Apparently, they believed he was skimming off the top. Wow. And they threw him in prison. So let's see. At age 24, hero of Spain. At age 53, disabled, dishonorably discharged, a slave, descended from Jews, failed at every job he ever had, bankrupt, penniless, and in prison. From hero at 24 to zero at 53. And there he sat in prison. What do you do with that for much of your life? Well, he tried his hand in writing when he was younger. He wrote some poems. He wrote some short stories. Any success? No. Critics today will look at those stories and say they were good. But no one was buying. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. No one was buying. So he kind of gave up being a writer. Well, when you're sitting in prison at 53, and you're likely to spend the rest of your life there, and no one will hire you to do nothing, and you're a loser in every sense of the word, what do you have to lose, huh? So he decided to write a literary form that didn't exist at the time, an epic novel. I know you're shaking your hands up and down. Some of you know who I'm talking about already. He wrote, because he himself was delusional, about a delusional man fighting delusional enemies. Title of the book, Don Quixote. Author's name, Miguel de Cervantes. That book has been translated more than any book in history except the Bible. That's true. We read it today in school as required reading. Everyone has seen a movie about this particular book. Everyone probably took his children, as I did, 1,000 times to see various different performances on Broadway, off Broadway, Cowtown regional theaters about Don Quixote. He was in hell, and probably a deeper hell than anyone has ever seen. And today, one of the most recognized and celebrated writers in history. When you find your virtue, you are unstoppable. Bret Warshawsky, when he was young, had a spiritual experience. It raised him up. Anyone who's had any kind of spiritual experience is going to be different from that moment forward. And how did friends and family interpret this experience? Obviously, he must be mentally ill. And he was treated for a mental illness for 32 years. 13 of those years on psychotic drugs, basically. 13 years on drugs against his will because they thought he was mentally ill. Someone give me a better definition of hell than this, because I don't know one. But Bret is an unusual guy. Should he have been angry? Well, as hell, yes. Should he have sought revenge? Get even? Hey, I'm from the Bronx. Yes! Absolutely. Absolutely. But he didn't. He had a love for filmmaking. And he thought, how can I combine filmmaking with philanthropy? Isn't that interesting? A man who's been beaten to death by life wants to be philanthropic. Tells you a bit about my next speaker, doesn't it? And he made a determination. You know, when a movie is done, you've got a set. You've got a wardrobe. You've got food. You have building products. You have equipment. Where do they go? Ready for this? In one giant dumpster in most cases. Sometimes in storage, but usually a dumpster. Bret said, you know something? I've got the making of a business here. and he began approaching the movie sets in pre-production. Why not leave the set? Why not donate the wardrobe to women's shelters? Why not donate the food to pantries? Why not donate the building products to construction companies? Why not donate anything possible, even money, to charitable cause? Because of Bret's work, when Netflix did a movie about a skate park and built an entire skate park for the set, they didn't put it in a dumpster. They let it sit there for the entire community to use forever. Because of his work, people like Steven Spielberg in pre-production decided, I'm going to give some of the proceeds of this movie to charity. Because of Bret's work, actors, directors, producers stayed around after the movie wrapped for a day or two and acted as a mentor for some of the students, some of the young people in that community. And he is slowly but surely changing the world. Bret, from hell, found his virtue. And when he did, he made a difference in thousands of lives. Bret, get up here.
Pardon me, I'm just feeling emotional and so.
Bret, take him in. Take him in. Relax.
It's an interesting confluence of stories and history and impact, social impact, human impact here. And I'm still in the work myself, so that's why I feel quite emotional. In the hero's journey, which most of you have heard of one way or another, Star Wars, and if you've never studied it, when the hero comes home through all the trials, they basically bring an elixir back to the community. It's what their journey and what their trials were all about. And it's really the medicine that they can offer society or to their friends and their families. And that medicine is their wound, really. So listening about Machiavelli, that's where I'm getting all the emotions, and Don Quixote, and I've lived my own version of that. And I don't have all the answers, and on one level, I'm a dreamer and an idealist and quite delusional, I think, maybe just like Mr. Quixote's. But as far as I'm concerned, I saw truth. I saw something I couldn't turn away from going through these experiences. So I'm going to share a little bit nonlinear as an artist type thinker and polymath. I might jump around a little bit. There's some main pieces I want to share with you about, first of all, mental health, the state of mental health in New Jersey, in this area, around the world, how it can be reformed, what it's actually like, and why it needs to change. I'm going to talk a little bit about this idea of philanthropy that Stephen mentioned. I have to course correct the record. This is what I love about mixing fantasy and fiction. In fact, I haven't worked directly with Steven Spielberg or Skater Girl, but I'm going to share a little bit about their backgrounds and why that's an important subject. And if this video works, it's just 40 seconds. I want to just start the day with it.
The first time I started really, that I was really exposed to Tibetan culture, I was in Nepal. I was trekking in the Himalayas, and I met some Tibetan refugees that had just come over the mountains. They were on their way to India to meet the Dalai Lama. And they explained that they weren't going to go back to Tibet until Tibet was free. The more I got involved with the Tibetan cause, I started realizing that the only way a change is going to come about is through spreading awareness, because our government isn't going to take a stand unless they're forced to. Our corporations aren't going to take a stand unless they're forced to. And so the only way that the change is going to come about is through mass public awareness. And the area that I'm able to help out with that is through music.
So the reason I show that is because Adam Yauch was from the Beastie Boys. I grew up on the music, and he had a spiritual awakening in the early 90s. These were the guys who talked about fighting for your right to party and girls, 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 and all that. And he had an epiphany that he just talked about, and he realized he had to do something about it. And this year is the 30th anniversary of the first Free Tibet Festival that he made happen. And I was there. I drove cross country to San Francisco as a young person, and I haven't been able to let go of the impact that music and philanthropy and culture coming together and converging and what is possible. It's been 30 years, and he says it right there. That benefit brought mass awareness to Generation X about Free Tibet, and it's part of my inspiration in terms of bringing awareness and change in the world of mental health. So, this is not really a pitch or a presentation. It's actually Scenius 1 of the Civil Rights Movement for the Soul. So again, the inspiration, you actually met Dr. King, and it's just incredible. The idea of standing on shoulders of giants is very important to me. That's why I'm bringing up some people like Krishnamurti to begin with and Adam Yauch. So thank you for the film crew for being here. Thank you to the co-producer of one of our many producers of the Civil Rights Movement for the Soul. And thank you all for being part of the cast and crew and for being in the movie, because that's how a failure does it. I can't raise the money. I can't figure out how to do anything. I fail at everything I single do. Failure is my medicine. So I brought the movie to you. And of course, I'm the one in front of the camera, but you're all in the movie now. And I don't have any waiver forms. So I'm just going to start with a little bit more background. This is my character Bible. If you guys are going to be in the movie, you're going to be characters and you're going to be playing different roles. You got to kind of know one of your co-stars and what the plot lines are, where the scene is at. So 1994, this is what Stephen was referring to. In 1994, the Psychiatric Association put a code into their Bible, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. That's the psychiatry Bible, so they can figure out what's wrong with you. They put a code called the religious and spiritual problem. I got there at the end of 1994. Nobody ever asked me about that. It was on my report. I was talking about Jesus and oneness. Nobody ever asked me. So it's a common case of something being on the books, but not really being embodied or enacted. We've seen this over many sectors and innovations. People are usually 50 years behind. So yeah, they put it in the book in 1994, but the doctors, the nurses, the social workers, nobody's really aware about it. Nobody's instituting it. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes here. I was brought into a room in the hospital. I went willingly because I was in an altered state, didn't really know what was going on. And they put me in a room, and they said, hey, the social worker's coming to talk to you. This is after 4 hours of blood work and sitting in horrible rooms. One of the rooms had a big TV like that playing the daily news. I mean, Marv would have heard about the Son of Sam. What is the worst thing you can do to someone who's in a heightened state or possibly paranoid? Sit him in front of the broadcast news at a 50-inch screen TV. That's where they put me. That's how much they actually understand implementing wellness in a hospital. This is 1994, of course, but things haven't changed much, which we're going to get to. So they put me in a room. They say someone will be with you in 5 minutes. 5 minutes goes by, 10 minutes goes by. Finally, I'm like, wait a second. No one's coming. I go to leave. The door's locked. As soon as I see the door's locked and I notice there's a camera up there, what does somebody do when they're an animal trapped in a cage? Get me the fuck out of here. I want to see my parents. They're sitting outside. Da-da-da. What does this mean? I'm a danger to myself or others. So what do? They drag me out of the room. They bring their medication to calm you down, and they bring the antidote because the antidote is needed because this medication often causes convulsions. So they pull me out of the room. They need to calm me down because I want to get out of the room, shoot me up, and I start going into convulsions. And basically remember saying, Mommy, Mommy, I'm dying in front of my mother. So my nervous system, my experience was, hey, you're dying. That was my experience. Then they shot me up, came back out of it. And then for the next 10 years, I went through cycles of these different things. And the reason I say that, it goes back to the Quixote story and some of the Machiavelli, is that I'm still working through it. I'm actually still slightly traumatized by it. And I would normally be ashamed to admit it, but I'm going to admit it here. Sometimes when I see the ice, I don't put my skates on. Sometimes I don't think I'm ever going to make an impact like Marv here. Gosh, that's my dream, is to give back to humanity. to give my gifts, to bring this elixir. And sometimes, yeah, I don't put my skates on, but I eventually do. So in 2006, I finally started feeling better. This is after 5 hospitalizations going through their system. A 19-year-old kid who was prom king and best looking and going to college for film school, now told, you're never going to be better, you've got a genetic illness. Just kind of stay a victim, and be good with that. It's the worst possible story you can get if that's not exile. A modern version of exile, I don't know what would be. So I went back to school 2006 for psychosocial rehabilitation. Thought I wanted to help people like myself. Couldn't stand it. I was starting to wake up. I don't want to work 9 to 5. What kind of life is that for me? I'm really much more of an artist or an entrepreneur. So in 2008, from 2008 to 2010, I started writing a screenplay about the Middle East and philanthropy and music coming together. I called it Einstein's Last Request and Project Venture Philanthropy. This is 2008, 2009 when the Billionaires Pledge came out. At that time, it was the height of a mainstream idea of philanthropy, and it's all I knew. That was in the papers. So I've been on this quest basically for 18 years. But even going back to what I showed you with Adam Yauch, 1996, I've been on this quest for 18 or 25 years of understanding how philanthropy can be reimagined, how it can cross with music and film and art and culture, and how it can do things that way that can't be done otherwise. And then for the last 13 years, after I wrote that script, I went around the world studying all different forms of innovation, from Web3 to cryptocurrency to spirituality to self-organization models, a gift economy hub in Rotterdam, lived in Cairo, Egypt. I worked with the late futurist Barbara Marx Hubbard, who some people know. She actually is one of the first women to run for vice president in 1984. She was in the delegation. She was a famous futurist. She talked about conscious evolution and co-creation. So I did all my time, last 13 years there. And then about 6 months ago, because of circumstances, I went from living abroad for 13 years to coming back home to New Jersey. And in true, I guess, hero's journey fashion, you got to end where you started. I can't help but think that's just nature and destiny calling me back. And I'm home now. And I'm just going to share a few things. So what did I learn? What did I bring home from this hero's journey? And then we're going to get into the philanthropy and the moonshot and what that means. First of all, I call this a genius one because we're all collective, a collective of geniuses. That's a term coined by Brian Eno, the famous music producer and creative. A genius is collective genius. But where does collective genius? It comes from each one of us. And the original definition of genius was not being exceptional at something. It was what you were born with. It's what was in you that was meant to come out and be yours. And I think it's really important for people to be reminded that's what genius really means. It's what's burning inside of you to come out, to be expressed through you and only through you. And this is Joseph Campbell, Hero's Journey. He said here, it's always been the prime function of mythology and rite to supply the symbols that carry the human spirit forward. What's more symbolic than filmmaking, music, art? This is the currency of real change, of real culture. And then I learned from Bucky Fuller, the famous American visionary. He coined a word called livingry, which is the opposite of weaponry, the opposite of killingry, livingry, which is a word that needs to be revived. So what did I decide? I decided story is load-bearing civilizational infrastructure. It's not just a fairy tale. It's not just an entertainment side job or something to keep us busy when we're bored. Oh, sorry about that. There we go. So I've created what I call Story Livingry Studio. I combine the word story with livingry. Livingry is, again, innovation technology for living, for life, for regeneration, in service to life. And if story is the fundamental thing that changes opinions, changes feelings, changes beliefs, underneath even quarks and atoms, those are not fundamental. Our feelings are fundamental. Our beliefs are fundamental. Our values are fundamental. So our stories, therefore, are fundamental. They are the symbols and things we use to create the civilization, whether we acknowledge it or not. So in this studio, we're talking about story is the means of how humans actually coordinate and govern and evolve and become themselves. Story is load-bearing. Story is actually everything. So I came home to New Jersey, and New Jersey's going through this crazy film boom. Everyone's selling shovels like in the gold rush. Netflix is moving in. They'll be here in another year. Paramount has built a new studio. There's another studio. And for those who don't know, New Jersey is actually the home of film. Thomas Edison invented film in New Jersey, and eventually it left because of taxes and going out west and all that. And New Jersey kind of became second fiddle and all that. But the numbers are crazy. It's happening. It's nuts. That's what I came home to. I think it was last year. No, last year. Janice Kovach, the mayor of Clinton, stood on this stage here and said, we're tying together government and film and advocacy, and there's community benefit possible. So I came home to these thoughts. And I'm just going to switch gears now, but I want to switch gears into Act 2 with this movie. As you can see, I love culture and memes. This is what Neo said at the end of the first Matrix, 1999. I was actually in an altered state when I went to the theater and saw that. Can imagine my surprise. But this goes for me in this presentation and for the rest of my life's work. I don't know the future. I didn't come here to tell you how it's going to end, but I did come to tell you how it's going to begin. So I'm going to tell you how it's going to begin, how we're going to change mental health on this planet, in this country, and starting with New Jersey, just because it's my hometown and that's what seems to be calling. Act 2, the plot thickens. I need you to meet some of your co-stars, some of your co-innovators, and some of your friends, the other geniuses. All right, so obviously I said a story can't just describe this reformation I want to create. It can build it. Story is that powerful. It can cross the barrier between what's outside of ourselves to what's inside of ourselves and produce results. That's my Martin Luther King homage there, the mental health reformation, and also Martin Luther, who did the Protestant Reformation. Enough was enough, nailed that damn thing on the wall. So today, in this scene, we're nailing that damn thing to the wall, and thank God the world will see it. I'm saying it, don't know if it's gonna happen, but enough is enough. We need to change things. We need to change them now when it comes to mental health. Famous saying, no force on earth can stop an idea whose time has come. To me, the time has come. Mental health needs to change systemically, not just on the surface. This is just a nice thing to share. I called it a mycelial genius. Mycelial is the mushrooms and what's underneath the ground. So when you see mushrooms pop up, what's actually going on is a lot of things underground. The mushrooms are like the final stage. So there's an invisible web underneath the ground. All the nutrients and resources and connections are all happening, and then poof, it's time, mushrooms pop up. For me, that's what this tipping point is in the country right now. We have all of this good work going on around the world of mental health reformation. It's just diverse, all sorts of voices. This is a little bit of a did you know, because I don't expect you all to be experts in mental health, and I want you to leave with a couple of facts. This idea of the chemical imbalance story, there's a serotonin is light in my brain, that's why I have depression, that's why I have bipolar. Basically, fiction. There's no evidence of that. It's been proven. It was a slippery slope that got run away with pharmaceuticals and doctors and nobody really questioning it. I'm not saying that these things don't exist, by the way. I have mood swings. I get depressed. As I've said, I'm still in the work. It's about how we frame them because that's how we respond to them. So yes, the chemical imbalance story is unraveling in the mainstream press. There's something called peer respites where people can go instead of a hospital. In New Jersey, there's 3 houses like that. Obviously, psychedelics are coming back. Survivors are writing textbooks now. There's a new code on the book. I told you about this one in 1994. They just added to it again. Again, it's not really being implemented. But something's happening. There's an archipelago of all different people right now. There's something called Mad in America. Millions of people have gone through an experience like me. You wouldn't believe it, but it can happen to any one of you. And there's plenty of stories about people. One of Stephen's good friends, Janet Werner, who's my business partner on a lot of this, she's stood on this stage as well talking about her experience. So there's all sorts of things going on, and all sorts of great people and movements and articles and professionals of all kinds, clinicians, doctors, psychiatrists, writers. This is a real deal. So this is what I call the Trenton Seniors. This is the local what's going on with New Jersey. So that's Janet right there on the right, my business partner, again, friend of Stephen. We just spent the day with Dale Caldwell Jr., the Lieutenant Governor in Trenton 2 days ago. We're working on this project called Aware. And let me see if I can, I'm gonna just show you quick what we talked about. All right. So we just went to Dale and we wanted to give him a did you know? Did you know all the different things happening? There's a Faith Action Center that he's opening, so we want to bring that mental health reformation to New Jersey's Faith Action Center. There's mental health in the workplace. Oh, wrong one there, yep. I'm just going to go in quick, just so you know. And then there's college and university campuses, which is why I was so inspired by that Adam Yauch and the Free Tibet, because the money and resources he created for the Free Tibet Festival actually launched Students for a Free Tibet on every campus in America, basically. So the activism and the concert and thing wasn't just a one-time concert. It actually generated resources to have Students for a Free Tibet go much deeper. And we shared with Dr. Caldwell also about the film industry, which he is fairly familiar with. So, oh, how do I get back? Okay, I think that's right. Right, so we call it a stone synergy soup in the middle. There's a famous parable, stone soup. Everybody brings something to the pot and puts something in. And that's basically the model that we're using in having these conversations. Hopefully this works. Yep, we also told Dr. Caldwell about an app we're creating. This is an app for what's called spiritual emergency. So there's mental health, there's all different spectrums of it. There is a subset of emotional experiences people have that are really understood as spiritual experiences, spiritual emergencies. They're not necessary clinical diagnoses of something like a schizophrenia or OCD or something like that. And quite often people get taken to the hospital, get arrested, or get put through the system when they had a clearly spiritual experience. So we're working on an app to help first responders identify when these cases may be possible. And lowest hanging fruit, at least get this code hooked to this person. So this person, when they go see these doctors or therapists, at least they're acknowledge that they may be having a spiritual experience or a spiritual emergency compared to something else. Okay, don't need that. There's slides in here I don't need. I'm just going to show you this real quick because I just want to drive home again the power of culture and music. So in 1996, he pointed a generation's attention at a struggle most of them had never heard of. The Tibetan Freedom Concert drew more than 325,000 people into Golden Gate Park, and I was there. That just shows you, I guess a little bit like you, Marv, like, you know, when you're there, when you feel something, it can change your life that way. But the concert was never the whole thing. It was a flagship pillar. It built a fund and an activist organization using music and youth culture as a deliberate instrument. That's what we're talking about here with film. We're going to get into a filmanthropy, new types of filmmaking and culture. And why do we stay islands as far as movements and things happening? Everyone's doing their own thing, which is awesome, but each effort has a mission and there's no connective tissue quite often. And then movements don't market themselves. You know, a lot of the people doing the good work in the world, their expertise is not communications or marketing or movement building. They're doing all this beautiful research and speaking and a lot of groundwork. But we need to package it differently, in my opinion. We need to make mental health a subject like freeing Tibet. All right, Act 3, transmedia and production. A new world requires a new script, a new language. There is not really one instance in history where new language was not necessary and new concepts in order to change something, because language, again, the symbols that carry our stories are so fundamental. Even going back to the Bible, I guess you could say, God said this and the word was with God. So I'm just going to run through quick. So this is, again, Janet, who was here in September 25 and September 24th. One of our friends, Dr. Chatlos, who's a psychiatrist who's also working on like deep prescription and the spiritual side of things. And she said, back then, it's more than a movie, it's a movement. So I'm carrying this story, and Janet started in 2005. She had a spiritual emergency. I believe it was after giving a presentation with Stephen or somewhere on Wall Street. And then she went home and she got taken to the hospital. And when she told them she was on Wall Street talking about mental health, they put that in her record as a deficit. They thought she was delusional and that she was making up. She was literally on Wall Street giving a presentation. But they didn't have the context because they don't care about context quite often. They care about what they see in front of them and what their books tell them to look for. So she said this a couple of years ago. And then I came along and we became friends, Jen and I, a few years ago. And I said, for me, it's not even a movement, it's a movement. And what I mean by movement is that a movement is generally expressed by the language of a time, right? Culture changes according to the context we're in. So a movement is when the primary carrier becomes story, as we've been talking about. And then I'm calling it a civil rights because it's It's about the individual. This is about more than just mental health or spiritual. This is about our subjectivity, our inherent dignity, our right to feel and believe and think how we feel. It's much bigger than actually the hospitals and some of the things I'm talking about. As I said, every movement has a carrier. Go look out through history. They all have the stage, whether it's writing or speaking. So for me, the mental health reformation, the carrier is the movement. Film, performance, technology, participatory media. We need all of it. And why is it for the soul? Because again, this goes beyond just mental health diagnosis. A person in a crisis is a relationship waiting to be understood, not a malfunction to be managed. We ultimately need to rearrange and re-explore what is mental health, what is consciousness, what is reality. Until that happens, we're running an old script and we treat people the way our scripts tell us to treat people. Why now? Because the old paradigm has reached its limit. Reductionism can't explain what's rising. We can't keep pathologizing people for having human experiences. Yes, they need support. Yes, they have the symptoms. Yes, they need help. But pathologizing and demonizing people gets us absolutely zilch nowhere. So for me, production becomes the reformation. I'll just throw out a couple more words. Pardon me. I know it's a bunch of language and new words. So transmedium production, we're used to hearing the word transmedia. Normally that means websites, video, email, social networking. Transmedium for me means every single medium. Governance is a medium. Economics is a medium. Biology is a medium. Funding is a medium. Television is a medium. These are all mediums, and we need to bring them all together to have the kind of impact we want in the age of AI and attention. How else can we do it but be super creative? Philanthropy, my love. This term was actually coined 15 years ago by somebody in a very narrow sense. I'm trying to rebirth it because I believe it's a very important thing and a beautiful thing to combine the love of filmmaking with the love of humanity, what can happen. And I've got just enough time to tell you a little bit of that. And regenerative filmmaking. This is when you leave something behind rather than even just disperse what's left over, as we've talked about. Okay, I'm gonna skip that. Act 4, practical moonshot. This is where you guys are gonna have a lot of fun as the movie continues. You're definitely gonna be filling out your character Bibles here. You're definitely gonna be bringing your passions, and you're definitely gonna enjoy the table reads in the future. All right, so I came home to New Jersey. I've been working on the ideas about philanthropy for 20 years. It started as evolutionary and spiritual philanthropy. All the work I did in Rotterdam, across the world, and the projects I've been part of have been backed by some version of philanthropy. So this is just something I can't get rid of. This is who I am. And Stephen, that really touched me when you said of all the things I've gone through or this failure as medicine, what am I still talking about? Fucking philanthropy. God, thank you for pointing that out. Jesus. At least I don't give up. So, philanthropy. I'm going to make it a for-profit company because I want to make money to reinvest into the solutions. Has anyone ever heard this term, philanthropy? Probably not, right? All right, so it was coined in 2007, but here's the bigger story. I've written a big article on this for people who love film. I'll get it to you in a follow-up. I wrote an article about 100 years of giving in film. Right? There's amazing stories in film history. Steven Spielberg forewent his $160 million salary from Schindler's List to make the Shoah Foundation, which created materials and supported Holocaust memories. Danny Kaye, 1954, made movies with MGM and the money went to UNICEF. Mary Pickford, the original silent star, passed the bucket around on her sets in 1921. Eventually that became like the Actors Guild and money, where actors were taken care of. And these examples go on throughout history. Skater Girl, which you mentioned, is my favorite. In 2020, they actually, as part of production, went in India and found an exact location where it would be the best place to create a skate park and left it behind and created a foundation for it. So it was literally part of the set, equally as important as the storyboard, equally as important. They literally made it part of production, which is very rare. The Spielberg example and Danny Kaye and Skater Girl are more rare. Usually things happen emergently and spontaneously, like someone notices, oh, we've got extra clothes, we can give them away. New York did it a little bit differently. I'm going to skip through that. New Jersey also has a program for helping redistribute things from films, as Stephen said, extra clothes, extra food. So I'm going to skip that. Okay. So I'm doing two things, right? So right now, there are precedents for companies that help productions stay sustainable and also share extra clothing and extra food. That has been done before. I'm hoping to do that again. Right now in New Jersey, there isn't a company serving the new boom that's actually doing that. They're all in other places. But the one thing they never really focus on in that philanthropic way is the experiential part of filmmaking. First of all, imagine a kid coming to a film set who wants to be a filmmaker, who lives in a home for abused children or something, getting a call and saying, hey, you can come down to Happy Gilmore today, meet Adam Sandler. This is another way a film can give back. They can provide experiences for people. They can generate money, they can leave sets, they can do it by design. That's why I call it philanthropy by design. So it's very conscious and intentional right from the beginning, thinking about how your production can give back. And then we've got the age of AI coming. Obviously, movies can be made by a single person with very little budget. There's no set, there's no clothes, there's no experience. So for me, ironically, this idea of regenerative filmmaking is actually going to be more cutting edge because it's the experiential part of filmmaking. Nothing can ever change the fact that if you build a set for people as part of a film and have that experience, that can't be taken away. That's going to become way more precious in the age of AI when everyone's making movies that don't have a set, that don't have clothing. Something to keep an eye on. And I've got a couple of minutes, perfect, to just fly through. So here's a practical moonshot. So yes, I want to create a company that does this philanthropy, right? Basic stuff, I'm going to try to help sets and productions make sure their clothing and food and things get to the right place. Then can they provide experiences, and are they interested in doing the skater girl thing? You know, I've read about Adam Sandler, for example, a very philanthropic guy, spent $180 million on Happy Gilmore. I guarantee you if we walked into his office ahead of time and said, hey, did you know you can create some building or something and leave it behind and shoot there and then give it to the community, he probably would have been open to it. I just don't think people are invited to think that way. So I'm wondering what New Jersey can do now, right now, using these principles of philanthropy, regenerative filmmaking, transmedia, and production to actually help resolve and change the mental health system, because obviously that's a passion of mine. So I'm looking at what happens when you put a production budget together with grants, with private philanthropy, with corporate partners. You get something that actually creates a $500 million, $1 billion budget. You know, James Cameron spent $1 billion for Avatar. Nice story, good conversation piece for a week, and then it's gone. Yeah, and that's great. Trust me, I love movies, or I wouldn't be here. There's movies that are priceless. We all know that. Star Wars, Schindler's List, all of them. Casablanca, they're priceless. They're gifts in and of themselves. However, just it's a new time. We can think differently in a world where people are struggling and suffering. I think we can do more. So I'm going to give you this last minute here, this use case. Right now in New Jersey, there's 1,100 people approximately in 4 different psychiatric hospitals. 250 of those people literally have been cleared to leave, but they have nowhere to go. So they keep them in the psychiatric ward. So pause for a second. Imagine that. Like you're feeling good, you're ready to leave, and then you are told you are staying in the psychiatric ward, which is the worst place in the world, trust me, even in 2026. No one wants to be in a home in the psychiatric ward. The numbers may be a little off. I've done the research, but it's basically costing New Jersey $90 million a year to house 250 people in a psychiatric ward. We already know that's $352,000 per person. All I'm saying is, let's make a movie about mental health reformation to keep it simple right now. Let's take that 75 to 90 million, build 300 tiny homes, 50 for staff, 250 for people, farm, put it in a trust so it can never be taken away, even if the governor changes or the senator changes. Same 90 million for 1 year they spend. Then the next year you've got another 90 million, build another 100 houses, keep building on the other one. You're creating a workforce, you're creating community. The biggest problem with mental health is we get sent back into the wilderness of horrible circumstances. So what happens? People end up back on drugs, back in the psychiatric ward, costing the state another 90 million. So I'm going to leave it there. That's why I'm looking at movies and philanthropy and culture and technology to come together and change this for good. Thank you.